Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to my guide to the Masked Carnival number 32, A Golden Opportunity. This is the new Blue Mage Carnival challenge added in patch 6.45, made available once your Blue Mage is at level 80 and you've done all the requisite job quests. I'll be covering the encounter itself, as well as my setup for earning the All That Glitters achievement, which requires a specific set of conditions to be met during your encounter. This Carnival challenge will have you face Goldor across 2 acts. The first one is pretty standard, but the second act is where things can get a little dicey. I've beaten this with quite a few setups, but if you want to complete the fight and the challenge at the same time in your first go, here is what I used in my most recent attempt. You'll need to get 3 conditions to get the achievement. First is Elemental Mastery, which requires you use one of each element against the opponent. 2 is a Walk in the Park, which just requires that you don't use Sprint. And 3, going for gold, which we'll go into more detail when we talk about Act 2. So for Elemental Mastery, these are the 6 spells I ended up going with. There are some reasons for these, because I agree that a lot are kind of weird choices, especially Ram's Voice and Mountain Buster. Mortal Flame is an easy choice, Sea Shanty is really good, and for Lightning, honestly you could use anything. I just went with Tingle instead of a different Lightning filler spell, but honestly could do whatever here. You just can't take Shock Strike because I'm taking Mountain Buster for a completely different reason. As for other mandatory spells, Ultra Vibration is one of the big ones. Since you need to freeze an opponent to use Ultra Vibration, that's why I have Ram's Voice in here, and that takes up the ice for Elemental Mastery. You can also bring Cold Fog and set it up in advance, but I just decided to keep it simple. Other mandatory spells are Sardine for interrupting and Diamondback, which you'll definitely need. Exuviation and White Wind are highly advised, especially Exuviation, because you'll want the Asuna. And finally, you can opt in or out of bringing Loom, depending on how comfortable you are with the particular strat I will use in this video. Just forego something like, I don't know, Bristle. You're not going to use it all that much in the fight, especially in Act 2 where it matters most. So as long as you can bring it, then, go ahead and get rid of something else. Now, both ends and Winged Reprobation are on here for a late phase mechanic in particular, as I normally use Night Bloom over both ends, and Reprobation without its combo skill is just kind of weird. For basic filler, I highly recommend Goblin Punch since it's instant, and I went with Abyssal Transfixion as a ranged filler option. A line AoE physical filler is also fine, but you'll need to be mindful of it at one point in the fight, so I just made this choice for safety. Now on to the actual fight. Act 1, like I said before, is pretty standard. If you're working on the achievement, be sure to just take Sprint off your hotbar at this point before you even pull Goldor, so you don't accidentally fat finger it. You aren't allowed to use it if you want to earn that Walk in the Park achievement. Goldor's first mechanic is Goldor Blizzard 3. Just interrupt it or you're dead, simply put. Goldor Fire 3 is next, which is just a chasing AoE. Run away from it non-stop, which is usually in line with your waning debuff from Moonflute anyway, so it's not like you could be doing anything else. Goldor will also fire a Goldor Blast line AoE, which you'll just naturally avoid because you're running away from the fire anyway. After a long string of autos, Goldor will use Slimy Summon, which summons a glittering slime. This thing simply explodes after a short cast, so it must be killed very quickly. It's pretty beefy, so Ram's Voice it and Ultra Vibration to instantly KO the thing. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't check to see if any of the other instant kills worked because I was already bringing Ram's Voice for Elemental Mastery anyway. Right after it's summoned, Goldor will also do Goldor Quake, which is just a cascading AoE. Step into the point blank after it goes off to avoid the follow-up hits. Next is Goldor Fire, which is different from the Goldor Fire 3 from earlier. This summons 8 adds, all of which will do a point blank AoE explosion after a short delay. You'll want to kill a single one to make a safe spot along the wall, or more if your AoE just auto kills them, more space isn't bad. After another Goldor Blast will be Goldor Arrow 3, which is a knockback. You can surecast this or just ride the knockback into whatever safe space you opened up. Just ensure that a fire is dead by this point, you avoid all the remaining explosions, and then dodge the Goldor Blast that comes right after. Now try to rush back to the middle of the room after that Goldor Blast to keep him in the center of the room while he's casting Goldor Gravity. When this hits, this will do big damage and slow the player by 99%, bringing your average speed to something below an absolute crawl. He then fires 2 Goldor Blasts for you to avoid. Now, I did this mechanic by getting dead center in Goldor's hitbox and just running at the speed of smell out of the Goldor Blast at the super slow speed. What's probably intended, though, is to use Loom to teleport out. You could do that. Here's what it'll look like, but I prefer the method of staying in the middle and doing the micro movements so I could keep spamming Goblin Punch for more damage to make sure the fight dies faster, just so there's less mistakes I can make later on. Whichever strategy you want to use is fine though. For the rest of Act 1, the only real new thing is Goldor Thunder, which places a hard-hitting dot on you and summons a bunch of random ground AoEs. Exuviation the dot as it lasts quite long. And like I said, at this point, the fight is on semi-repeat. If he doesn't die fast enough, you'll actually be faced with a Goldor Fire and Goldor Thunder 3 combo, which really just needs you to kill another fire while dodging all those ground AoEs and cleansing the dot like before. He should definitely be dead or close to dead for Act 1 by the time you get to this, though. Act 2 is where things get tricky. The first 50% is pretty okay, but the last 50% is a test of patience. Don't worry though, for the achievement, there is no limit on how long you can take. If you want to wait for cooldowns here at the start, go right ahead. If you want to use your pot in Act 1 and then wait for your pot in Act 2, go right ahead. You can do whatever you want because you have all the time in the world to get this done. Goldor will start this act with 3 back-to-back shining summons, each different than the last. The first has 4 gilded golems, all of which do cross AoEs. There are safe spots immediately between them and kind of behind them on the wall, a little offset. I just go to this safe spot with the arrow 3 knockback that Goldor does. Simple. The second shining summon will have 4 dolls, all of which do conal AoEs. This is unavoidable, so you'll want to ensure to only be hit by 2 of them and that you have diamond back up. This still does about 50% of your health in damage, so make sure you have enough. Goldor will also do a quake right after summoning the dolls, so dodge that and then diamond back safely. Shining summon number 3 will summon a gilded Cyclops in the middle of the room. This mob will pull you in before doing a large point-blank AoE. Just immediately run back out to the wall once you're pulled in, dodging any lightnings brought about by the simultaneous Goldor Thunder 3 and cleanse the dot. Once you're safe from that, Goldor will do a few autos before going back to the middle of the room and channeling a long cast, Gold Fever. At the end of this cast, Goldor will activate the Gilded Crystal to the north and become completely immune to all magic damage. If you're doing the fight normally, go kill the crystal with physical damage and then return to doing Goldor's mechanics. If you're trying to get the achievement, you need to avoid killing the crystal and finish Goldor off with only physical attacks, which takes quite a while. A word of warning if you're going for the All That Glitters achievement, a lot of your skills are AoE, so try to ensure they're never aimed at the crystal. I've hit it with things like Winged Reprobation by just accidentally aiming towards the north side of the room. I also realized, as this is the first time I've really used it, that both ends is enormous, and that if it direct hit crits that crystal, it can be a problem. So the only time you want to use both ends is if you are on the south side of the room, opposite of the crystal. You could also just not bring it and use this spot for Loom if you really want to, just to avoid the risk altogether. Other than that, this is going to be a super slow phase. Goblin Punch spam and some form of ranged physical attack helps a lot, which is why I brought Abyssal Transfixion. This is why we took those physical primal skills as well, things like Mountain Buster, in order to improve our physical damage profile and shorten this phase in particular. You can also go for the final Sting play, but I opted to just do this normally instead of bringing all the setup spells for it, especially on the chance that I don't direct hit or crit it and I get the really low roll. It can easily do like 11% without a crit or direct hit, but again, I just went with safety. Goldor's first attack in this phase is Shining Summon. This one, however, summons all 3 of the Phase 1 summons at once, but it's very simple. Find the one doll that is summoned and wait until the Cyclops pulls you in. Then run behind the doll and near one of the golems that are on either side of it, all the way at the wall in that safe spot I pointed out before. Goldor will fire 3 blasts during this, but they shouldn't be of any concern. They're just line AoEs. After a string of autos, Goldor will use Gravity again. Now, it's very important that while he was casting Gold Fever, you got close to him and kept him in the middle of the room. It's important because I like to use that little circle in the dead center of the arena to help me find the center of the hitbox for my Loomless Gravity dodge. Same as before, Loom if you want to, or slowly walk through, whatever works. After another Blizzard 3 you'll have to interrupt is Goldor Rush, the most deadly attack by far. This will do an arrow 3 from the center to knock you back before performing Goldor Thunder AoEs, Goldor Quake, and Goldor Fire 3s chasing AoE all at once. Now this isn't that big of a deal on the surface, but the big problem is that Goldor Thunder AoEs can sometimes just make the mechanic feel undodgeable, especially when the first part of the quake goes off and you're supposed to move in order to avoid the second hit. Ugh. I like to keep my health high, and I like to keep J-Kick available just in case I feel like I'm going to get cut off. It's an option at the very least. Now remember that there is a fire AoE that's going to chase you for just a few hits, so you'll want to keep moving from your starting location and then dip into the quake when you can. There will also be tons of gold ore blasts here at the same time, but there isn't much to do with these except be slightly more mindful. You're really worried about everything else more so. Once you've done this, you've done every mechanic, and the second phase is on repeat. If you're efficient, you can skip the second gold ore rush, but again, be careful to avoid destroying the crystal. Like I said, I have done it like 3 or 4 times recording this video, and I almost did it again even in the last one where it gets low regardless. So you just want to make sure that doesn't die and you don't die, and you get the achievement. You can even be hitting good Vuln stacks. As long as you survive, yeah, you're fine, as long as the crystal lives and you did the other conditions. Now, finishing the fight itself is required for finishing the level 80 Blue Mage job quest. However, the All That Glitters achievement will actually unlock a new weapon for you to grab at the Mammal Jaw in the middle over by the Blue Mage NPCs. Just head over there with 800 allied seals, and you will see the Gentle Mage's umbrella available, which you can then wear and just look good in if you're ever on Blue Mage for whatever reason. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for my guide to Goldor, the Masked Carnival number 32. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I'll be actually making another Blue Mage video in the near future, but one that is a bit more expressive about the state of our one and only limited job. Anyway, with that, I'll see you in the next video, and until then, take care.